everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Robin, or Hobbits Reading List, and today I am going to share my thoughts about reading Stephen King's The Dead Zone. Okay, so this is going to be like a summary of my thoughts because I listened to The Dead Zone while I was on vacation in Maine, while we were driving around, and so we did finish it within the 5.5 days. I didn't film anything in between because we were constantly doing things, and then I was trying to keep up with filming our clips for ranking bookstores in Maine, and so it was too much to juggle. So I have the plot summary pulled up, and so I'm going to read through it and then share sort of my thoughts on reading or listening to The Dead Zone. One thing I will say, we listened to the version that was narrated by, oh crap, what's his name? It's a Franco. It's not Dave, it's the other one, whose first name I can't remember. That sucks. But anyway, whatever his name is, God, I feel so bad that I don't remember his first name. He did okay. I feel like my dad made a comment about how there were other versions or other Stephen King narrators that maybe would have done better. So it was fine. There wasn't anything really wrong with it, I guess, but it just felt a little off in some way that I can't quite put my finger on. So the book starts with kind of like a flashback. In 1953, Johnny, our main character, is a kid and he's skating on, I think, a pond or lake or something. And there's bigger kids playing ice hockey nearby, and he ends up getting into a really bad crash with one of them accidentally. And he hits his head, and that sort of triggers this mild precognition, psychic ability that doesn't show up a ton at that point. But he's generally okay, and then sometimes he just has feelings, and he sometimes he shares that or he acts on that, and that's kind of it. It's not really a huge deal at that point. And then we also see at a different time, at a different time, a flashback following a different character named Greg Stilson, who is working as a Bible door-to-door salesman, and he kills a dog. That's our first introduction to this character, which is not a great introduction. We're not supposed to like Greg. So yeah, that really set the tone for any of Greg's perspectives. He's the antagonist. He's not a good character. We don't like him for many reasons, one of which is that the first time we see him, he kills a dog. The dog wasn't doing anything wrong. The dog was protecting its territory, and its owners weren't home. And Greg was, from the dog's perspective, was invading. So the dog didn't do anything wrong, and the dog didn't actually bite him. I think it just nipped at him. But then we get to a flash forward, I guess. If it's not a flash, we stay there for a bit. We go to 1970. Johnny has become an English teacher at a high school. He is dating a woman named Sarah, and they go to a carnival thing. First he scares her with a Jekyll and Hyde mask, which that comes up a couple times, and I guess I kind of get it, but I don't know, it comes up several times as a very significant thing for Sarah, but I'm just why? I think I can follow the leaps in logic, but I don't know. But at this carnival, Johnny gets into playing, it seems like roulette, which was interesting. But he follows his like instinct and he keeps winning, and they're attracting a crowd and he keeps winning bigger and bigger. Sarah starts to feel unwell. Her stomach starts hurting a lot and she feels like it's because of a hot dog she ate. Which is fair. But eventually like Johnny wins like $500, which in 1970 is like a huge, like it's a huge to win now, but like it's huge in 1970. After he does that, he takes her home, he makes sure that she's okay, and then he gets a taxi to go home. In this taxi, he is in a major car accident because some teenagers were drag racing and there was a head-on collision. The taxi driver is killed, and I think Johnny was like thrown from the car, but he ends up in a coma for 5 years, which, oof, that is hard. It's just hard to hear about how Johnny's struggling to like connect with how much things have changed in those 5 years. So like he's asleep the whole time and then he starts waking up and he starts, you know, being more present, and he's able to hear that like his mother has become more of a religious fanatic and she's, you know, getting involved with like these people who are taking advantage of her religiosity. Sarah has gotten married to someone else. His parents are in a lot of debt. The politics of the country have changed. There's just so much that he has to like catch up on, and reading about that was really hard because I could only imagine like how overwhelming that would be and like what like whiplash it would feel like, because to him, he was still in 1970, he knew what was going on, and then all of a sudden he's in 1975 and it's like like everything changed for him overnight. So I felt really bad for Johnny at that part. I felt very bad for Johnny throughout most of the book, I'll be very honest. He does not have an easy life after he wakes up from a coma. He also, through neurological testing, he discovers that there's a part of his brain that has been permanently damaged from the car accident, and he struggles with accessing like number-based things or like location-based, which does show up a couple more times. But I just thought it was I appreciated the neuroscience aspect of it. I did like this book. I'm saying like, oh, I appreciate this and this, and it's making it sound like I didn't appreciate other part of the books. I liked the book, but I just really liked those parts because I was like, oh, that's interesting. As he's going through these testing, he ends up discovering that his like instinct or precognition ability that had been there previously is like ramped up. And he discovers this by taking the hand of one of his doctors and knowing a lot more about this doctor's life and his, what's the word I want? his distance, I guess, from his mother as a result of World War II. And Johnny turns out to give enough information that this doctor is able to call, and I think he heard his mother's voice and then hung up, and he's like, reconnecting would not do anything for either of us, which was sad. But I was like, okay, I kind of get it. While Johnny is still recovering and trying to navigate this new ability, because he, you know, touches a couple more people, he ends up warning someone that their house is on fire, so she's able to go and like prevent too much damage, but that causes some fear, and you know, people start realizing like he has this ability that he's psychic, and so he ends up doing a press conference where like, I understand like people don't believe in psychics, like that's fine, but like there was a reporter at this press conference where he didn't believe Johnny and his abilities, and he was like, prove it. And so this reporter gives the, I think it's St. Christopher necklace that he was wearing to Johnny, and Johnny's like, oh, this was your sister, she really struggled with addiction. He was able to say like the nickname that this reporter had, And this reporter was like, no, you're lying, you know, you somehow found out that information, like it's still all fake. I'm like, you told him to prove it and he did. Like, like what was the point if you weren't going to believe him with something that was like, he gave deeply personal information. So like that was annoying, but I felt like it was real. That is something that people do. It's stupid, but people do it. And then after that, Johnny's mother, who was very annoying. Like, I struggle with people who are so enmeshed in anything, really. But, like, she was very enmeshed in religion, and it was so much. And Johnny, so she dies. She has a stroke and she dies. But Johnny continues to hear her voice and hear her pushing him to use his ability, which isn't a bad thing, but it feels very guilt-driven. Like it feels like you have this ability, you have to do it. If you don't use it, you're turning your back on God and me and all this sort of stuff. And it didn't feel good, the voice that was in his head that came from his mother. So it was just like, even after she died, because she was a lot in any scene that she was in, but even after she died, it was like, oh, she's still here. And then Johnny is able to go to his dad's home, continue his recovery. A like tabloid journalist comes and tries to get him to be like a standard psychic for the tabloid, and Johnny is like, well, I'm not gonna do that because it sounds like you're asking me, like, if I don't have like a vision or whatever, you're asking me to like make something up, and that's against my ethics, and I think that's great. However, the tabloid then publishes a paper like calling him out as like a hoax, pretty much. And Johnny's kind of like, okay. He's like, yeah, well, now my like reputation with strangers sucks, and like now I'm getting hate mail, but okay. Like, Johnny's not super bothered. Which I think is great, because it's like that he's not looking for fame. While he's at his dad's, he is visited by Sarah and is pretty much presented as this like, hey, today is the day where we wrap up our relationship. And by wrapping it up, they end up sleeping together, and it's sort of like consummating their relationship, but also a goodbye. And I felt like it made a lot of sense. However, it was just like, it wasn't really a goodbye. Which makes sense. They cared deeply about each other, and if Johnny hadn't been in a coma, Sarah probably would have married him. They would have been happy together and had a life together, but it wasn't really a goodbye. Like, they still wrote letters. Johnny still, you know, thought about her, which totally makes sense. But it was just like, I don't know, on one hand, I'm kind of glad it didn't lead to like a full-blown affair. But on the other hand, I'm like, but it also didn't do the thing that like was the intention. And there wasn't necessarily an acknowledgement of that, I felt. So I don't know, I felt like it made sense, but it felt like it didn't necessarily change anything. It just allowed them to have sex. So, I don't know. It was interesting. And then he is contacted by the sheriff in Castle Rock because there have also been perspectives from this like serial killer in Castle Rock who's, you know, going after the nasty people. He was raised by a mother who put some horrifying ideas in his head about like cleanliness and health and sexual health and all this sort of stuff. So he becomes a serial killer. And we don't know who he is. And the sheriff from Castle Rock, Sheriff Bannerman, is sort of at his wit's end, and he asks Johnny to help them. You know, he's like, I don't really believe in sidekicks, but like, I'm doing anything I can now. And so reluctantly, And mainly because Johnny hears his mom's voice, he does help them, and he is able to find out that the serial killer is an officer in the police department. And there's this whole thing between Sheriff Bannerman and Johnny when Johnny's like, it's this guy, Frank Dodd, who the sheriff views as like a son. And so Sheriff Bannerman is like, nope, absolutely not. That's not possible. He absolutely refuses, which like emotionally I understand. Because like he viewed this guy as a son. He viewed him as an excellent officer. I get it. And on the other hand, it's like, you asked Johnny for help. You asked him to use this ability, and then as soon as you hear something you don't like, you turn around and accuse him of making it all up. And I'm just like, why ask if you weren't prepared to hear any answer? Like, I know that he was expecting to hear like, oh, it's just like random guy. But it's like, you asked for help and you got help, and you kind of have to just take that. Like, I can understand and accept Sheriff Bannerman being like, I really don't, I'm really struggling with that. But to say that Johnny is lying, it's like, Johnny didn't want to do this. He didn't want to get involved in a police investigation. He just wanted to stay at home and relax and recover. And he helped despite his wishes. And then to be called a liar for like, I felt like it was for hours. It was just like, I felt very protective of Johnny. Sheriff Bannerman finally is like, all right, well, we'll investigate, you know, to get like evidence, because I can't just believe you. Which, that is fine. That makes sense. They end up going to Frank Dodd's house. They discover that he has removed himself from the situation. However, because of Johnny's involvement in the investigation as a psychic, that is published in the papers, and he had previously been approached to resume his old job as an English teacher, but after his involvement in the investigation is revealed, it is decided by the school board that he is too controversial to return to teaching, and so that job offer is rescinded. And I was like, it's too controversial. Like, he helped solve a murder. How is that controversial? And I get, like, people are scared of what they don't understand. But it's just like, give a different reason. Don't say it's controversial. It's not. Just say you're scared. I have a big issue, apparently, with people just, like, dancing around their feelings. It's like, what you're feeling makes sense. It makes sense to be scared of something you don't understand or you don't know how it works. That makes sense, and just say that. But obviously, like, that can't happen in a lot of books because that would take away the story. So we also get brief, like, snatches of Greg's life as, like, a rising politician in New Hampshire, which is interesting. And the way he's going about it is not, it's not kosher. Like, he enlists like a motorcycle gang for like enforcement and security and blackmail. And he, like, there's this one scene where he's teaching a lesson to a teenager who wears like a shirt with profanity on it. And he's like almost like straight up torturing this kid. And he gets the kid to like apologize and like be respectful, but it's just like, okay, like, he's I don't like Greg. He freaks me out. He was the mayor of Ridgeway, and then he politics and he wins a seat in the House of Representatives as an independent. And while this is sort of happening, Johnny has become a private tutor to a kid who with a very wealthy father in New Hampshire. And so Johnny starts, you know, seeing Greg on TV, like campaigning and stuff like that. And Johnny's just like, he feels weird. Like, Johnny just doesn't get a good vibe from Greg, which is fair. He ends up going to this, like, campaign stop that Silson's going to be at because it's a, you know, election year. And he's like, I wanna shake his hand. I wanna touch him. I wanna see if I can see anything. Boy, does he. He sees Silson getting elected to president, and then launching, like, a world war and nuclear conflict. And, yeah. So Johnny sort of has to debate with himself of, like, what do I do with this information? And so the way he presents it, the way he sort of gets other people's opinions of, like, asking people, like, if they had the chance to go back to, like, 1933 Germany, knowing what they know now, would they kill Hitler? Because that's sort of the correlation that he makes. And he gets a variety of answers, which are very interesting. But it's sort of getting more and more into his head of, like, I have to do something about this. I have to do something about this. But he struggles with that. Like, he knows that he should do something, and what he should probably do is assassination. But his moral compass really makes him just stall because he's like, it's still murder. And he's like, I really don't want to do that, which is fair. Okay, and I am going to stop there to charge my camera. Okay, I'm back. So I'm gonna do the rest from memory because my phone is charging. Everything needed to be charged, and it's also a couple days later. So, where did I leave off? Johnny is sort of reckoning with the idea that he has to assassinate, what's his face? Greg. And he doesn't want to do it because it's against his moral code, and he feels like he knows that the FBI is investigating him, the Greg, and so he feels like he has time. So in the meantime, while he's trying to figure out what to do, I think I mentioned that he's also serving as, like, a private tutor to this, like, son of a wealthy family, and that work is going really well. The kid graduates, and Greg has another, like, premonition that a graduation party that is happening at this, like, steakhouse or something is going to catch on fire, and a lot of the graduates are going to die. And so he freaks out, for lack of a better word. It's a very big reaction, which is understandable because he really cares about this kid, Chuck. And eventually, some people, like, don't believe him, but, like, eventually the dad of Chuck sort of humors him. Is like, okay, we'll host our own party. We'll try to get whoever we can here, not go to the steakhouse. And then tomorrow, when the steakhouse isn't burned down, I'm going to say I told you so. That's sort of his attitude. And then the steakhouse burns down. Because of course it does. Because Johnny is psychic. So, and Johnny isn't the whole, like, I told you so kind of guy. I'm sure he would prefer to be wrong. But after that, Johnny has, like, he's a lot of conflicting feelings. Not necessarily about, like, his premonition and that there were many people he didn't save with it, but there's also, he has this conflicting feeling sort of relating back to Greg. So he leaves New Hampshire, he goes to Phoenix? Albuquerque? Somewhere in the Four Corners. Yeah, I don't remember exactly where. And so he's just trying to cope, but his headaches are getting worse, he's getting spacey, and he calls his old doctor, who gets him in with a neurologist where he is, and it is confirmed that he actually has cancer. And that's what's contributing to the headaches and everything. And at the same time, Greg finds out that the FBI agent that had been investigating Greg has been murdered. So Johnny has this sense of, like, he's running out of time to prevent, you know, Greg becoming president and launching the country into a nuclear war. And so he has to do it. So he makes his preparations, he writes letters, he gets things, and he goes to New Hampshire, where he finds out that Greg is taking steps to, you know, ingratiate himself with the voters. So he sort of does this like tour of like small New Hampshire towns every 2 weeks to hear, you know, their opinions and complaints, and tries to fix things, which sounds good. But everything else that we know about Greg, like, we saw his like campaign speeches when he was running for the House of Representatives, and it was like, we had seen Greg by himself and the way that he talked to other people, and the way he talked to other people was very like manipulative. It was very like cocky. It only cared about him getting further and further up the ladder. But in his campaign, it's very much like, oh, I'm the people's person. I'm on your side. I want to help. I'm just like you. And then he had this whole thing about like how one of his like parts of his platform was hot dogs. I don't know. It was just like, he's like, everyone gets hot dogs. Like, that was literally part of his platform. And I was so confused at that part, and I was like, wow. And that's just a really interesting thing to listen to at this time. So there's that whole thing where we know that Greg is not actually this like super empathetic, caring person. Like, he's legitimately just buttering people up. Unfortunately, he's good at it. So Johnny sneaks into where he knows this like town hall is happening. He hides. He almost gets caught, but he doesn't. And, you know, he sees his opportunity, takes a shot, misses a bit. There's a whole thing. The scene itself, like the exposition of it, lasts like, I want to say like 10 minutes. But the actual action of it is like quick. It's like, it's fast. And there's a whole back and forth where like Johnny is zeroed in on Greg, trying to get at him. Greg's motorcycle security is like trying to get to him, shooting at him. And Greg grabs a little kid and uses him as a shield. That's not great for publicity. So Johnny does end up dying. However, in his last moments, he is able to get a hand on Greg and see that the future that he saw with the war is no longer possible. And that's because there was a picture taken of Greg using that kid as a shield. And so that destroys his political career. And then the last chapter is going through the letters that Johnny wrote to his dad and Sarah and the doctor, as well as snippets of testimony from the, I don't even know what to call it. I think it was like counsel or something, but it's essentially like a trial about the shooting, about Johnny going after Greg. And that was really interesting. So overall, I did enjoy it. I have to accept now that, like, yes, there are some books of Stephen King's that I've read that I have not liked. But the ratio is skewing to where, like, I'm enjoying a lot of his books, and I don't know if I just need to be a little bit older. I gave it 4 stars, 4 out of 5. Like, I really liked it. I thought the story development was interesting. I thought the plot was interesting. There were some parts where I'm like, at the end, I understand why the serial killer arc is there, but like once it's solved, it just felt like it was unnecessary, and I don't necessarily know if it needed to be there. And I'm sure my dad's gonna be annoyed that I said that. But like, so there's like some tiny things where I'm like, But again, that it wasn't enough to detract from my enjoyment of the book. I did like it, and Stephanie said she liked it as well. So it was just a really nice thing to get to do while, you know, driving around New England, is listening to The Dead Zone. So yeah, it was really good, and I don't really have anything else to say. So that was my fourth? Yeah. That was so the fourth Stephen King book that I finished. I did finish another Stephen King book maybe like 2 days later. So keep an eye out for that video. But leave me a comment if you have read The Dead Zone, if you liked it, like the video, subscribe, click the notification bell so that you are notified when I do upload the next Stephen King video or my next vlogs. And I will talk to you then. Bye.